Hello, Shadowcat back, and this week I want to discuss something different. See, I have my heart set on doing something on protest, which I mentioned last week, and I still want to do that, especially right now with the big protests that are going on up in Canada, because that's a hot topic, right? We should be doing that. I mean, everyone's looking for information on the Freedom Convoy 22, and it's a hot topic, and if I wanted subscribers and people to watch this and everything else like that, that's what I would be doing. That's what a smart person would be doing. Clearly, I'm not a smart person, because that's not what I want to talk about this week. Nope. This week, I want to talk about something that is tangentially related to that. And what I want to talk about this week is accelerationism. That may be a term that you've heard before, maybe it's not. And because maybe it's not, usually when I start these videos out, I try to start off with a definition. That way, when we discuss it, while you're thinking about it and either watching whatever's in the background, because even I don't know what it's going to be yet, or you are maybe looking this stuff along the way, you can kind of be on the same even keel. Well, I went looking for the definition of accelerationism so that I could give it to you, only to find out that accelerationism has like 6 or 7 different definitions, and none of them quite seem like the right one. Not to say that they're all wrong. I mean, obviously a word can have multiple meanings, but none of them are what I want to talk about today. No, what I want to talk about today in terms of accelerationism, especially when it comes to political philosophy, is... how do I want to phrase this? It's a political philosophy for when you've given up. Now let me explain that, because that's a little bit reductionist. Let's say that you have two sides, okay? Two sides on an issue. And it doesn't really matter what the issue is, but let's just say that it is a contentious issue about which direction a nation should go, okay? You have choice A, you have choice B. Now, because this is a dividing tribal kind of line, and we have plenty of those to choose from, so honestly, I don't need to say one, take your pick. But we have one side that says, we must do A. If we do B, the country is going to fall apart. The other side, of course, says we must do B. If we do A, the country is going to fall apart. Obviously, there's not a lot of wiggle room in here for compromise. Or maybe there is, and maybe the two sides are simply unwilling to compromise. But whether it's a matter of willingness or whether it's a matter of just pragmatism, there's no way that you're going to meet in the middle on this. And so one side or the other is going to be right. And that also means that the other side could be wrong, which is what I want to get to. Accelerationist philosophy basically says this. If you firmly believe that what somebody is going to do is going to cause massive chaos and unrest, you first want to speak out about it. You say, look, okay, this is a bad idea. These are my arguments, and this is why it's a bad idea. Here's my evidence, here's my projections, here's my assumptions, here's my expectations. If we go through and do this, there is a good chance that this is going to end up poorly for us. Of course, the other side is going to be saying the same thing about your plan as well, but the point is that you come out and you make your case. This is where the freedom of speech comes in, okay? When that fails, well, then we have protest to fall back on, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do a video on protesting in general, and also why I ended up doing this one instead. Because when you come out and you say, look, this is bad, and the other side says, I don't care, now you get into the area of protest, where you actually show up in person and say, this is wrong, and I'm not leaving until I get my voice heard, and we stop this. Now, protesting in general, as long as it's peaceful, is allowed. You should be allowed to come out, wave signs, wave flags, chant, whatever you want to do, so long as you are not hurting anyone or causing destruction. And yes, that also means economic destruction as well. You can't necessarily just wall off an entire city and say, well, we're not hurting anyone. No, but you've walled off the city and you're essentially laying siege to it. There is a difference between a protest, an occupation, and a siege. Learn them well. That is not the point of this video. Perhaps I'll get into that in the next one. So you have the right to protest, and you should. Everyone should be well acquainted with protesting. But let's say you protest, and that still fails. Well, now we get into the realm of law, and I have covered law on this channel before. Law is basically the way of saying we're going to change the system so that you can't do what you want to do. Now, in the case of what we're talking about here, where you're saying we want to go in this direction, we want to make these legal changes or these policy changes, whatever, to go this direction, that generally means that you go to, say, the court, you get an injunction, which is the court saying, yes, we see what you're doing, we're stopping what you're doing until we can have further discussion on it. That's essentially what an injunction is. We're going to stop everything until we better understand what we're doing. But what happens after that? Let's say you get the injunction, you sit down, you have your discussion or whatever on it, and the injunction is lifted and they're allowed to proceed. Well, if you are in Team A and Team B is getting the go-ahead to do everything they want to do, what more can you do? Well, it's not really well advised, but you could basically start a war. And we've seen that before in the United States and potentially in Canada, and we've also seen it in various revolutions and civil wars around the globe. When you've run out of all other options, well, there's always violence. Now, does violence always work? No. Does it usually work? Also no. Sometimes it does, but that's a gamble of long odds. That's why violence is supposed to be the last resort. But there's also the option of accelerationism, and that's what I want to talk about today. See, accelerationism is when you look at something happening and you say, you know, I see what you're doing, and if we do this, we are almost positive that it is going to destroy everything. And it's not just going to hurt us. It's going to hurt you too. Okay? You know not what you're doing when you put these policies into place. I would say a really good example of that would be when the administration, the current U.S. administration, decided that they were going to pull back on a lot of their border controls. Many people warned that and said, you know, if you do this, it's going to create massive problems across the country. They did it anyway. We went to court. We got an injunction over that, and the injunction was either overturned or expired. I forget what it was. But eventually, I mean, all of that stopped, and now we reap the benefits of that. And so the end result has been, that's fine then. All right, you're not going to do it, then we're going to take care of us, and we are just going to let you do whatever you want. You get to reap the benefits of your actions. And that is essentially what accelerationism is. It is making the bed so that the other side can sleep in it. I mean, we've all heard that story before. Usually it's when you do something stupid and somebody will tell you, well, you've made your bed, now you get to enjoy it. Accelerationism is saying, fine, I'm going to let you make your bed. Sometimes you might even help them along on it. And you say, you know what, you want to vote on certain things that are going to cause problems? Well, fine, I'll vote for it too. Because obviously what we've come across here is the fact that it's not going to work, but they're not going to give it up. You don't have the power to stop it. And the only way to get around that lack of power to stop it is to either use force or you need more people on your side. And there is the crux of accelerationism. Last week, my video was talking about politics in general, and I said that, first off, you should not have to care about politics, but at the same time, you absolutely must. And the reason I said that you absolutely must is because eventually it's going to get to you. Someday, probably when you least expect it, you're going to have policies or laws or statutes or whatever that are going to come down, and they're going to say that you have to change something in your life because of what somebody else said. And the example that I gave was COVID. And I'm going to go ahead and reference the Freedom Convoy up in Canada right now, which has been joined by construction workers and farmers and ranchers and all kinds of things like this. Because what is the convoy about? Well, the convoy is about vaccine mandates and COVID measures that have been implemented across Canada. Now, why would a farmer who works on a farm, usually by themselves or with an extremely small crew who may not even see each other on a daily basis, who usually spend their time in open fields or in the cockpits of giant tractors, why would they care about politics? Why would they care about mask mandates? Why would they care about social distancing? Why would they care about vaccine requirements? They work on a farm. But that's where ignoring politics comes in. Because they were not involved, at least not directly, or perhaps they were just too busy. But because they weren't, or perhaps they ignored it, or they said, it's not going to be my problem, they did nothing until eventually it came down that they had an option. They could either follow the new statutes, or they could be punished for it. Either wear the mask on your tractor, or be punished for it. Get vaccinated to go drive your tractor, or be punished for it. The same thing goes for the drivers of the big rigs, the tractor trailers. They said you must be vaccinated and you must wear a mask in the cab of your own truck. And they said no, because why should they? They don't talk to anyone. They don't see anyone. They drive for, 12 hours a day, and then they pull off somewhere and they spend the rest of the day in the back of their truck. Maybe they go to a hotel, if they can, or well, not a hotel, a motel, if they can afford that. Most of them just sleep in their own truck. Why do they need to be subject to any of these measures? Hence why I said, if you're not involved, it will come for you. And sometimes it'll come for you even if you are involved. There's no guarantees here. But this is also where acceleration comes in. See, accelerationism comes in when you say, I have done everything I can to stop this. I've spoken my part, I've protested, I've tried the legal route. I don't have the ability to stop this on my own. So now it's time for me to get the rest of the people involved. And how do you do that? Well, if you say that if this is going to, or you say the other side's plan is going to be bad, then maybe you should just let them go ahead and do it. Because if you're right, then a whole lot of people are going to be very mad when it goes off. Because if a whole bunch of people who were previously uninvolved and uninitiated into the whole political sphere suddenly find out now that to go to the store, they have to bring paperwork, and they have to present their paperwork to simply go shopping, as they have done in certain provinces in Canada and even certain states in the US. Well, now suddenly those people who were uninvolved are going to look at what's going on and say, I don't want this. And now I'm angry. And now I'm going to work against it. And the more they keep pushing policies like this, the more people they're going to wake up and initiate. So it becomes a political strategy to simply say, I'm going to let you make things worse. By my own standard, my own subjective standard, I'm going to let you make things worse just so you can make people angry. And I think that's what we've been looking at a lot lately. When we see a whole lot of these measures that are coming down, you see a lot of people resisting, but more and more people every day are realizing that the entrenched political sphere is not going to be moved. There is no lever large enough that you could simply rock that ball. No, you're going to need more people, and so accelerationism is becoming increasingly not popular, but it's becoming increasingly common in the opinions of people. That's why you're hearing a lot of talk right now about war. You're talking about culture war, civil war, or revolutions. Not necessarily revolutionary war, but you're getting the idea that there's a conflict coming. And when people are talking about it, you have most people are talking about it in terms of how do we stop it, okay? But there's a growing minority of people that are saying it cannot be stopped. And those people are saying, instead of trying to stop it, you should be preparing for it. This is accelerationism at its core. They're saying, what is coming cannot be stopped. What is coming cannot be avoided. So rather than wasting time, energy, and resources on trying to avoid it, it is time that we simply let things play out. Or perhaps even move them along faster, while we prepare for the conflict coming down the road. That way, when it does get here, we'll be able to meet it head on. It is the political equivalent of saying it's got to get worse before it gets better. And unfortunately, I personally believe that's where we're at. When you look at politics, when you look at it in the United States, when you look at it in Canada, when you look at it in the United Kingdom, in a lot of the smaller nations in Europe, the divisions that exist cannot be overcome. Every single issue, or I should say every single wedge issue, but we're quickly running out of issues that aren't wedge issues at this point. There are no compromises in that. And just to pull one from the United States, I will go back to the abortion issue. See, regardless of your feelings on it, because I don't really need to know what your feelings are on it, the issue is this. One side says that abortion is murder. The other one says abortion is a choice. One side says that it should not be allowed at all, or perhaps only in emergency situations. The other one says that there should be few or perhaps no restrictions on it. Where's the compromise in that? There is no middle ground on there. If you're on the side who believes it is murder, then how do you convince one of those people that, well, maybe it's murder, but it's justified murder after, say, 16 weeks? Or before 16 weeks? I don't get it. Right? I don't know what the arguments are. But basically, how do you convince somebody that it's justifiable murder, it's acceptable murder half the time? You're not going to. At the same time, on the other side, you have people saying we should not have any kind of restrictions. This should be a woman's right to choose. How do you convince those people that, well, it should be her right to choose until it's not her right to choose? They're not going to. There is no middle ground there. You're either on one side or the other. And we're quickly finding out that even on the issues where there are middle grounds, like in, say, the energy sector debates, we're finding that the two tribes, or sometimes 3 or 4, depending on what country you're in, we're quickly finding out that even where there could be compromise, they're not willing to compromise anymore. You're either with us or you're against us, and that's all there's going to be. So when there can be no compromise, when you can't have speech, when you can't have protest, when you can't have the legal injunctions, when you can't have anything else, then the only thing you have left is conflict. And that's where we're at right now. As it stands, up in Canada, the protest with the convoy, they're quickly approaching this themselves. The convoy has done everything they can to be absolutely peaceful. The government in charge up there, however, has been absolutely firm in saying, we will not bend our knee to anyone. Now granted, some of the provinces up there have decided they're going to roll back a little, but that's the provinces. What they've gone up there to protest has been the entire nation's mandates. And they said that they're not leaving until they get that. The nation, the federal government, has said absolutely not. And they've even gone so far as to brand the protesters as domestic terrorists. So they're basically saying that we will not negotiate with terrorists. And while that is a laudable statement, firstly, I think the label has been just slightly misapplied. And also, where's the middle ground? Obviously, the protesters are not going to get what they want, because the federal government is not going to give them what they want. At the same time, the federal government wants them gone, and they have stated explicitly they're not leaving. So where does it go from here? It's pissing off a lot of people, I know that much. The people in Ottawa are calling for action. They're actually siding with the state, saying, you know what, we don't care. Clear these people out however you can. And as far as I understand it, I'm recording this on Friday, the state has made a good effort of going through and kettling the convoy and squeezing them into a box so that they can start arresting them. As I understand it, several arrests have already been made, and they're closing the box. If they manage to do this, though, what's the end result? Let's say they manage to go through and arrest every single member of the convoy. After all, the Prime Minister up there has already enacted the Emergency Act, which means that Canada is essentially under martial law. Now, that means that the Prime Minister has essentially complete control, although he only has complete control so long as people are willing to follow his orders. And as I understand it, the list of people willing to follow his orders has been rather short, but rather short is not non-existent. He still has people that are willing to say, whatever you tell me to do is what I'll do. That is how you get martial law. In fact, that's how you get worse than martial law, but that's a different subject. The fact is, there's no compromise up there. And if they manage to remove this convoy and make it illegal for them to ever do it again, well, this is simply accelerating them towards war. If they take away the Canadian people's ability to protest at all, and the government makes a statement that it's either our way or the highway, and the highway leads straight into a camp, then there's only one other option left. And right now you have people that are waiting, just waiting for that to happen. There are people, and if you go look at the internet, you go look at the people that are on the ground at the convoy, who are saying, look, this has failed. We need to start preparing for what comes next, because the convoy protest didn't do anything. That's accelerationism. It's throwing your hands up, it's giving up and saying, look, we tried, we failed, now we prepare for the next drastic measure. Accelerationism is never a good thing. But I think it's one of those realities that people need to understand so that they can recognize it. Because accelerationism isn't guaranteed, nor is it required. Because when you get to the point of accelerationism, you're seeing people who are literally giving up, saying, okay, fine. What other options do I have? Please give me other options. They're begging for other options. And this is when you can give them to them. All you need to do is pull back. But if you have one side or the other who is absolutely unwilling to pull back, then accelerationism is inevitable. And we're seeing it right now. That being said, I don't really know what else I can say about this subject. You can look around yourself, read the news, watch the television, scour the internet, whatever you want to do, you'll see it. And a lot of people are preparing for it. In fact, I'm preparing for it. I would suggest that you do too. I mean, better prepared than caught off guard. But just because we're preparing for it doesn't mean that it has to happen. So, be mindful of what's going on. Keep looking for those other options. I mean, if we find one that works, great. If we don't, we'll be prepared. And that's kind of the idea. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And if the worst is going to happen, then I guess we let it happen. Because as much as we don't want it to, there are other people who are dead set on making it happen. So do that. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you're knowledgeable. Make sure you're paying attention. And I will see you back here next week, probably with a thing on the protests, which I covered a little bit here, but I want to cover them more in depth. Not just what's going on topically in the news, but on why we protest, how we do it, and why it's not working anymore. So if you want to be here for that, make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit the bell icon so you're here for every video when they come out. If you know somebody else who might need to hear about this, share this video with them. It's not a pleasant video, but, well, not everything that is necessary is pleasant. Leave a like on the video, it helps the algorithms. Leave a comment, that also helps the algorithms. Plus I respond to all of them. And I'll see you back here next week. Until then, take care.